Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Nowhere Yudarris. So in this episode we're going to be going through biology's own immune system. We're going to be speaking about what makes up the immune system, the important parts of it, and the types of immunity your body has. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below if you have any questions or any topics you want me to go through. So we're going to start with the immune system, the general concept, and it consists of two things, innate and adaptive immunity. So with the innate immunity, it's composed of defense that is active against infections, but it cannot target specific pathogens. That's why it's called the non-specific immunity. So let's say you have a general bacteria enter your body that is, not really specific. Maybe you had it before, uh, your body will act on it and then destroy it quickly. And it destroys pathogens using using cells such as the macrophages and dendritic cell. Macrophages type of like a white blood cell. And then you have leukocytes. Leukocytes are part of the immune system and they're produced through hematopoiesis and divided into granulocytes and organeleucytes. So the granulocytes are neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils, and then the organeleucytes are lymphocytes, monocytes, and macrophages. Remember, that's the one we spoke about earlier. Next, we have the adaptive immunity. So adaptive defenses, they target specific pathogens. They're slow, but they maintain immunology memory of the pathogen in case it comes against your body, so they attack faster in the future. They have B cells which release the antibodies. So the way the adaptive immune system works is that they have B cells. Pathogen comes, so B cells release an antibody that binds to the antigen for marking and destruction. So the B cells are stored and activated in the spleen. Next, you have T cells. T cells activate the B cells attack marked antigen, and they are produced in the thymus, and it is cell-mediated immunity. So the line of defense timeline. So this is basically timeline or the stages of defenses your body has. So you have the skin or the physical barrier, and it also has antibacterial enzymes on it. It's called defensins. Next, you have the gastrointestinal tract acid, and it eliminates pathogens that's in your stomach. And then you have complement proteins in the blood activated by a classical pathway. And then you have infernos to protect against viral replication and decrease the permeability of cells for viruses. So it decreases the permeability of viruses affecting your cells. Next, you have the arangulocytes. They initiate endocytosis and digest invaders and present invaders as peptides using specific protein called MHC. So this is an important protein. You need to know it because I'm going to explain and we're going to base a lot of stuff on it later on. And this MHC protein binds to the antigen peptide and then carries the cell it carries the pathogen to the cell surface to be recognized, and then cytokines stimulate the inflammation and cause the immune system. So we got skin, and then acid, and then complement protein, and then infernos, and then you got the arangulocytes doing endocytosis, and uh, they they use MHC protein to bind to the antigen and have it carry it to the cell surface. So last slide I mentioned cytokines. Cytokines are signal protein that help control the inflammation in your body, and they allow the immune system to mount defensive germs or other substances make you sick. And too many cytokines can lead to like excessive inflammation. And as I said, they also regulate immune responses because they're signaling proteins. So mast cells are really important cells that release histamine and chemicals that promote inflammation. So you see how there's usually, like for instance, I don't know, a zit, you have a zit or you have inflammation. that is happening. That's due to mast cells releasing histamine and other chemicals. Next, you have natural killer cells, and these are lymphocytes that are able to detect MHC, the one we talked about. What is MHC? MHC basically brings, or it's like a mark for the cells that are brought to the surface to be destroyed, and then the natural killer cells kill the body cells that are infected with virus. Granulocytes has three types: neutrophils and eosinophils and basophils. So the neutrophils, they target bacteria and short-lived pathogens. And do you see how like there is pus that forms on your face or zits? This is from dead neutrophils. And then you got eosinophils. They are responsible for allergic reactions and parasitic infections, and they release histamine for inflammation, causing vasodilation. Next, you have basophils, and they cause allergic reactions and release histamine. And now you're wondering, why is inflammation really a recurring topic and an important topic? Inflammation is really important because it contains the infection spread. You don't want the infection to be spreading everywhere, and that's the role of inflammation and the role of histamine. Next, you have humoral immunity, which is also part of the immune system, and it's the production of antibodies that could take a week to be effective after initiation. So sometimes you get, like, I don't know, a really strong flu or a really strong, like, I don't know, disease, and then you've been sick for a whole week. So, and then there's no result as well. You're still sick. Whatever happens, you're still sick. Okay, so what happens is humoral immunity produces antibodies that take a week to be effective after they like bind to the antigen. So these antibodies, or called immunoglobulin Ig, they bind to the antigen to attract phagocytized antigens. Phagocytized means it's like they consume them. It's like, imagine here, phagocytized. Imagine this is a mouth, and then this is like the antigen, and it's like it's eating it. And they are held together by disulfide bonds and have an antigen binding site. Next, you have the agglutinin, which causes the pathogens to clump together, forming a complex to phagocytize. So the agglutinin causes pathogens to clump together, so they form a complex. So did you see the eating progress I drew earlier? For that to happen, next you have degranulation, and this is antigen binding to an antibody on the surface, and it releases histamine and causes allergic reaction. So degranulation is really significant in the inflammation process. And then now this is the initiation of an antibody. How does the antibody really initiate and tag to the pathogen? So the primary response of B cells, they undergo a process of hypermutation to find the best antigen binding region. Alright, so B cell hypermutation. Then B cells bind to the antigen and plasma releases antibodies, and memory B cells stay in the lymph nodes for re-exposure. So B cells bind to the antigen and the plasma releases antibodies. And then B cells also have memory B cells, where, remember, this is part of the adaptive immunity, that they store the immunology of the pathogen so they can attack faster in the future. And then if the microbe comes again, that's the secondary response. Memory B cells bind to the antigen quicker. T cells mature in the thymus. They're produced in the thymus, and they mature into positive and negative selection. So positive selection allows maturation to respond to the antigens on MHC, and then the negative selection allows for apoptosis. It's cell death in cells, and it's self-reactive. Next, we have the T cells. Let's break down the T cells. T cells are broken down and they're into helper, suppressor, and killer T cells, and they're facilitated by thymosin or thymosin. And then now we're going to start with helper T cells, or CD4+. They coordinate immune system by screening lymphokines, and they recruit plasma and macrophages. So they coordinate the immune system by screening lymphokines. So what happens if you don't have CD4 anymore? So the loss of CD4 leads to HIV, and then it leads to AIDS, because CD4 responses to a specific type of MHC. It's called MHC2. So let's say a viral infection causes the loss of CD4. This will lead to HIV, and it will lead to AIDS. Next, you have the cytotoxic T cells, or the killer T cells, and these are CD8 plus. They kill viral infections by injecting toxic chemicals that promote apoptosis or apostasis, which is also self-destruction. And they respond to MHC1. So CD4 respond to MHC2, CD8 respond to MHC1. Then you have the suppressor cells. Now, after producing all of that, CD8, CD4s, and stuff like that, you have the suppressor T cells, which express CD4 plus and expresses a FOXP3 protein, which helps tone down the immune system once an infection is contained. I want to explain something real quick. So you got, for instance, action potential, you got immune systems, you got a digestive system, you got all these systems. They release hormones, they release stuff, but after releasing whatever they're gonna release, they're gonna keep on releasing unless there's a mechanism to stop it or to control it and to like tone it down. So that's where like you need to understand the process. Exposure, and then release, and then you need to conclude it by like after it's done its job, it needs to tone down. Now this is a summary of bacteria. How does a bacteria get engulfed? So macrophages engulf bacteria and release inflammatory mediators. And then you got present antigens from pathogens on the surface with MHC. 2. CD4s. These are the helper T cells that coordinate the immune system and screen lymphokines. Then cytokines attract the inflammatory cells like neutrophils. These attack the bacteria, like we said. And then mast cells activate and release histamine and degranulate. So remember, degranulation helps with the cell surface with releasing like histamine and the inflammation, and histamine releases and leak capillaries. Then the dendritic cell presents antigen to B cells, and then B cells produce the antibody, and then antibody tags and destroys bacteria. Dendritic cell activates CD4 plus T cells, and T cells activate macrophages. So that's the cycle of how a bacteria is engulfed. And thank you so much for listening and tuning in today to the immune system. If you have any questions, let me know, and please like, subscribe, and thank you so much for tuning in.